Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on higher education for third country nationals and refugees in Europe. My name is Geertra Lano. I'm the regional specialist in migrant integration based in the IOM regional office in Brussels, and I'll be moderating this TandEM webinar today. So on behalf of the entire TandEM project team, I would like to welcome you to this webinar and hope we will have interesting discussions. Now, today we're going to look at the topic of higher education. It's actually one of the first series that we are organizing under the TandEM project, a project that looks at empowering migrant youth in Southern Europe. Today's webinar will be the occasion to present the findings of a study that was conducted in the framework of this project by our partner European University Association, and Teresa Zhang, who's the Deputy Director for Higher Education Policy at EUA, the European University Association, will be presenting the main findings and conclusions of this TandEM study on higher education for third country nationals and refugees. Now, after that presentation, we'll also hear from different stakeholders in the region. We have Alexandros from the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki in Greece. We'll hear from Stefan Zandt from the Qualifications, Recognition and Information Center in Malta. And we'll also have the opportunity to hear Laura Norton, who's a research fellow at the Sapienza University of Rome. Now, before we start, I would just like to give you some information on the logistics of this webinar. We kindly ask you to switch off your microphones, to switch off your videos. You will have the opportunity, of course, to ask questions. For that, we invite you to use the chat function. So feel free to leave any question, any comment in the chat. After the first presentation, we'll then have opportunity for questions and answers. Good. So with that, I would perhaps kick off this webinar with a short presentation on the TandEM project. I will share the presentation. Okay. Good. Can you all see the presentation? Colleagues in Rome, can you confirm, please, that you can see the presentation?
Hello?
Yes?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, you can see the presentation. Yeah. That's perfect. Now
yes.
I just have to figure out how to move the slides, actually. Just a moment. Here we are. Good. So just a brief introduction to IOM. IOM is the International Organization for Migration. It was established in 1951. National organization working in the field of migration. Now, as IOM, we are committed to the principle that human migration benefits migrants and society, and for that we act in different ways. First of all, to try to advance understanding of migration issues, also to assist in meeting growing challenges of migration management, encourage social and economic development through migration, and uphold the human dignity and well-being of migrants. As such, of course, we are mainly specialized in migration, perhaps less in higher education, but we do feel that higher education is very important when it comes to the issue of integration of migrants and refugees, which is one of the reasons why we decided to focus on education as part of this TandEM project. So the TandEM project aims to empower migrant youth in Southern Europe and build a bridge between migrant youth and local youth. So the idea is to promote dialogue, to promote mutual understanding. And one of the key focuses here is to work with migrant youth who are currently enrolled or interested in enrolling in higher education institutions. So a large component of the project is dedicated to encouraging young Southern Europeans to actively contribute to the integration of young migrants, for example, through peer-to-peer student mentorship schemes and youth campaigns. The project is funded by the European Union through the Asylum, Migration and Integration Fund. It has a 2 years duration and it's implemented by IOM with two partners, the European University Association, EUA, and COREIS, who is responsible for the aspect related to the interreligious dialogue. We cover 6 countries, Croatia, Cyprus, Greece, Italy, Malta and Spain, and there are 11 universities involved in the project. Now, why precisely working with universities? Well, we feel, first of all, that education is a key for inclusion and that fostering the active engagement of young students can also promote integration. We see diversity and intercultural awareness as key values, and therefore we place really a lot of focus on enhancing communication among youth of different backgrounds. Part of this is also interreligious dialogue and understanding. So in the TandEM project, we have 4 specific components. The first component relates to a regional social media campaign, and the idea of this campaign is to contribute in changing the narrative on migration and demystifying some of the stereotypes. This social media campaign is really led by the youth, the students themselves. Secondly, we have a mentorship scheme in universities in Italy and Spain, where mentors support the integration of students with a migratory background. The third component focuses on interreligious dialogue, which is implemented in Italy, Malta, Spain, and Croatia. So here we encourage interfaith and intercultural dialogues, again, at universities. And finally, we, of course, have the cross-country regional study where we look at access-related needs and barriers of migrants in higher education, promote a more inclusive education. And it's specifically on this component that our webinar today will focus. If you have any questions or you would like to find out more about the TandEM project overall, you can visit our website, which you will see here on the slide, and you can also contact, of course, the TandEM project team. Now that we're all familiar with the project and the context, I think we can move on actually to look more precisely at the findings of this study that was conducted to look at barriers and access to higher education for higher education policy, and she will be presenting the key findings of the study which they conducted for the TandEM project. Teresa, can I give you the floor? You can unmute your microphone.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
yeah, normally it's unmuted.
Very well. I will stop sharing.
Good morning, everybody. Yes,
Good
I
morning,
will
Teresa.
try to share mine. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Sorry, I'm also trying to adjust a little bit my settings. And normally you should be able to see my screen. Do you see my screen?
Right. Yes,
okay,
we can see
great.
your screen. Perfect.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you, Gertrude. Well, good morning, everyone. And thanks for having me on our findings from the study on application for third country national and refugee integration. Perhaps a short word first before I start and dig into the recommendations on what EUA is The European University Association is the representative organization of about 800 universities and national rectors conference across Europe. And by Europe, I don't only mean the EU, but also the Europe as understood under the Bologna process, so the European higher education area comprised of 48 European countries. And the reason we joined this Tandem project was also mostly that because we were already committed when we joined to the refugee topic at EUA. This was in the wave one of the whole refugee welcome initiative, and we started our activities in this area basically by having also what we call the refugee welcome map, which maps the initiatives in higher education institutions across Europe. So this is also why we were particularly interested in getting involved into Tandem and for the opportunity to conduct this study. So I will just very quickly go through the methodology for the study. The aims of the study were to explore the links between integration and education policy and practice, and also to analyze and compare the access barriers to higher education for third country nationals and refugees, and provide concrete recommendations at policy level on how this could be improved. And what we understand by third country national students is a broad definition, basically, as citizens of a state that is not a member of the EU, nor a citizen of the Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway, and Switzerland area. But within the scope of the study, we tried to provide a specific focus to refugees who are under any form of international protection and have particularly urgent societal integration needs. Why I'm precising this by making the difference between the two definitions is because usually at higher education institutions, European universities in general, there are policies which we commonly call internationalization policies targeting third country nationals. But it's only very recently that the topic of refugees participating into higher education came up as a specific topic. And this is why most of policies that we could see at institutional level are still, let's say, devised to fit regular third country national students, so international students, but not necessarily refugee students. And in this regard, it seemed to us particularly interesting for the scope of this study to specifically look into barriers, access, etc. for refugee students within the group of TCNs, and look into the link, into the relation between integration and education policy. All right. So in terms of methodology, we did it at a desktop research level for the legal and policy frameworks. We also conducted a survey of higher education institutions, and we also had a series of interviews with ministries and other national and regional level government bodies responsible for both higher education and for integration policy, and also with a series of ENIC-NARIC representatives. And then after following this round of interviews and also research results, we structured the report into 6 parts. The report is available on the Tandem website as such, so I will not go in detail through each and every part, but mostly the rest of my presentation will focus on the main challenges and also the project recommendations. Hello?
Okay, so I just close the video for you and rejoin the presentation. No.
Can you still hear me, or hello?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Okay, because I'm hearing somebody else.
Off your microphone. Yes.
All right.
Go ahead, Teresa.
All right. Okay, but I would like to draw your attention on the fact that there are also country reports for each of the Tandem countries in the report. So if you want to dig more specifically into how your country does in terms of integration policy relating to higher education policy, etc., you can also find more detailed information, of course, in the report. So for the main findings and recommendations, what I would like first to emphasize is that the research clearly underlined how higher education, but also education in general, can play a crucial role in the societal integration of migrants. This contributes, of course, social cohesion. And there are clear benefits, of course, for integrating TCNs into higher education, but it's not only in terms of palpable, palpable social or economic gains. It's also a question of projection or self-projection. Let's say it's mostly also a question of changing self-perceptions from refugee to I'm actually a university student, getting integrated into that community, those communities, and also broadening and empowering capacities and capabilities. And this, no matter what the chosen subject area is at university, it's a mean also to build up leadership skills, and it also can benefit entire communities in the event of repatriation, along with the skills needed for repatriation. The conditions set by national level policies and by institutions for access to and also success in higher education are quite diverse. Yet what struck us in the course of that study is that actually the challenges faced by third country nationals and more specifically by refugees are fairly similar across the TandEM. To dig more precisely into the recommendations themselves, I would like to first emphasize, and this is really the very first umbrella recommendation here, the recognition for the potential of the higher education sector to contribute to integration. What we could see in the course of desk research and in the course of our research here is that policy areas also can tend to be fragmented. So you can have policies for education and policies, for example, for integration, but not necessarily relating to each other and the potential that each other could have in contributing. It's part of higher education institutions' social responsibility to ensure that the student body reflects societal diversity, of course, but policy levels should also review institutional practices, consider how they could be upskilled, how they could be related to each other, how they could be related also linked to action plans and future policies. The second recommendation we would have relates to increased policy support for participation in higher education as a means to integration. What we could see here is that in most countries there is a quite strong focus, and rightly so, on measures for early education and for language learning. Yet the potential of higher education participation is either not considered or not really met with concrete actions, or at least it could be improved. And it's quite crucial, though, that from the point of view of equity and social integration, refugees who qualify have access to higher education in this regard. So here we could think about recommendations at European level, but also at national levels. I won't detail all of them here, but they are all detailed in the report for sure. For example, in terms of removing access barriers to primary, secondary education, but also to higher education beyond those linked to formal recognition, for instance. But also backing in national level policies, backing with concrete measures, budgets and targets, measures that relate to higher education integration. The third recommendation is about providing targeted fundings. I think in many instances we found out that indeed the lack of funding for higher education access programs and for student support came out as a strong disadvantage, and this is one of the main challenges faced by potential and current students, TCN and refugee students, but also by the institutions that aim to enroll them in their programs and would like to provide additional services and quality support. I will just go into the next batch of recommendations. The fourth recommendation we would like to come up with is to enhance this multi-stakeholder transsectorial policy development and implementation. They are dynamic approaches already, but they should also integrate the migrants themselves to play a role as a actor here, and also relate to different sectors, agencies on EU level, but also at national policy levels, as well as at institutions, so within higher education themselves. The following recommendation is about considering integration as a two-way process, as a reciprocal process, and that measures should address the target group and their hosts And here, EU and national policies should communicate better and relate better to each other about the positive impact of integration projects to help also overcome negative perceptions. The next one is about equal treatment of refugee students with national and EU students in higher education policy and practice. What we can see here is that often they are treated, as I mentioned at the very beginning, as third country national students, so basically as internationals. But they face additional barriers and their integration needs are more urgent, but also more targeted. So our recommendation here is that they should be treated actually equally to domestic or EU students in terms of admission, fees, support, and at policy level. I won't surprise anybody here probably by saying that the next recommendation is about addressing the information gap and streamline procedures. We got some reports indeed also on difficulties still to navigate through, let's say, and European and national levels, to our sense, should invest into information materials and training for staff working directly with the target group, especially newcomers, to include at least basic information on higher education. And there is also here a question of outreach to make additional. And finally, and this is the last one, this is a recommendation on include the perspective to higher education access in integration and language courses. So they are courses founded to, language courses that are founded, but they should also offer option to reach the language level necessary for higher education access and include information, system information on higher education. We heard stories, for example, about language courses that are provided, but are not really connected with the levels needed for the first level of higher education degree or path that the person would like to reach. Institutions, on the other hand, should also open up their language courses and future. This is another point, of course. All right. I would like just to finish here with some positive notes. Those are the student voices that were also collected in the course of the project and the study. Some students stating how welcome they felt and also the feeling of being like home. But also, and this really touched us very much, this statement from a student from Cyprus who said, "I want to be able to give back to Cyprus for the acceptance, love and care it has shown to me. I want to become an active citizen." This dimension of active citizenship, being empowered, is actually one of the motivations that push us towards better thinking, definitely, and better relating higher education policies and integration policies in this perspective. I would like to thank you for your attention. Here I did not put my context because actually I'm not the one who authored the study. I would like to pay a tribute here to my colleague, Henriette Stoiber, who could not be here with us on this webinar because she's actually currently on maternity leave, but she definitely is EUA's expert in these topics, and I would encourage you also to read the study itself that is available on the TandEM website. Thank you very much, and I will stop sharing now if it works.
Thank you very much, Therese. That was a very interesting presentation of the findings of the study. I would like to invite all participants, if they have any questions, any comments, if you would like to contribute to the discussion, you can use the chat function. So feel free, anything you would like to ask or share, you're welcome. From my side, I think it was very interesting, Therese, because you really put this focus on the fact that higher education can play a crucial role in integration and social cohesion, but that unfortunately it seems that, policy areas are still a bit too fragmented and there is perhaps not as much attention to higher education and integration as there should be. It's clear indeed, as you said, that the focus is mostly on early education, language learning, while, we should also consider participation through, for example, targeted scholarships direct support or others. What I also liked is that you clearly indicated how, integration is indeed a two-way process. It's not just about the migrants and the refugees. It's as much about the host communities and how to overcome also perhaps some of these negative and these are, key stakeholders here and key institutions also where migrants, where refugees can be empowered. And I think the student voices that you gave at the end clearly demonstrated it's truly, beautiful to see how one of the migrant students said, I want to be an active citizen. And I think this is indeed what we are trying to achieve. Now I see Stefan is already online. He's joining us again. Stefan, I would like to ask you to close your mic for a few more minutes, please. In the chat, if there are any questions. Now, Therese, I think you were very clear. Perhaps what we could do is to have a round discussion at the end of the webinar and hear now first from the different stakeholders from the region, Southern Europe. So thank you again, Therese. Please stay with us. And for now, I would like to invite Laura Norton, who's a PhD research fellow at the Faculty of Economics in the Sapienza University of Rome in Italy. And the research of Laura is mostly focusing on foreign students and the narrative around migration. So Laura, I would like to invite you to switch on your microphone, switch on your video.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, Laura. How are you?
Fine, thanks. Thank you so much for this invitation to join this interesting webinar, and thanks to IOM and the European University Association also. So I may share screen also.
Good. Yeah, it seems the presentation is loading.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we can see your slide.
Okay. Great. So I will start now. So my contribution is based on a social and cultural psychological research that focuses on international students as a specific group of migrants in Italy. The main aim of the study, I will briefly describe here, was to document the access,
Stefan?
their pathway.
Yeah, okay.
And
sorry, go ahead. We heard Stefan in between, but please go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, so the main aim of the study, I will briefly describe here, was to document the access, their pathways, and integration process within the Italian and academic context, taking one big university as a case study. And moreover, the study considers both the institutional perspective and the student's perspective, using quality and quantitative methods such as ethnography, questionnaires, and in-depth interviews. So first of all, let's give a quick look at the presence of foreigners enrolled at higher education institutions in years 2017 and 18, according to the Ministry of Education, Universities and Research, MIUR data available. Foreign students enrolled were 5% of total. From those 87,000 foreigners enrolled at Italian universities, 78% were third country nationals. According to the Italian constitution, all students are equal in rights independently of their nationality and status. The access of TCNs to Italian higher education institutions is regulated by Legislative Decree 25 of July 1998, number 2086, and MIUR issues annual guidelines for the access of international students that you can find on the website The Study in Italy. So for Italian higher education institutions, increasing the number of international students enrolled has been a priority since for MIUR is considered an indicator of internationalization, and thus put available funds in order to promote actions that facilitate the access of foreign students and improve the attractiveness of the academic offers, such as international and English taught programs. In terms of integration, the institutional responsibilities of TCNs lie with the Ministry of Interiors, and the responsibility is shared with the Ministry of Labour and Social Welfare. But in terms of access, the few existing studies in this matter have revealed that studying in Italy for international students has its attractive factors, such as high academic standards, right to education as scholarships, low tuition fees based on income and socioeconomic background, international courses offered, and Italian language and culture. In terms of barriers or obstacles, obtaining visa and residence permit can be hard, as well as getting the recognition of prior qualification or degrees obtained abroad. Lack of coordination between offices causes confusion and disorientation. The absence of knowledge of Italian language may be a barrier in order to study in Italy, as well as only few funding schemes and student residences in some Italian regions. In conclusion, the few existing literature about the access and paths within Italian universities has highlighted that in many cases is a navigation path with too many obstacles. In order to have a closer and deeper look, one case study has been conducted taking into consideration Sapienza University of Rome. Sapienza is a big university. There are 100,000 students enrolled, and 5% of them are TCNs. From almost 7,000 foreign students enrolled, 73% are non-EU citizens, mostly coming from Iran, Albania, India, China, and Azerbaijan. At Sapienza, the Office for Students with International Degrees is responsible of the evaluation of foreign qualifications for admissions to all study and postgraduate courses of foreign students and Italians with foreign qualifications. Deliver information on the educational offer also through telematic tools to foreign students who request it, and implements a database for extra EU and Chinese students and have relations with the Italian embassies in the world. From the ethnographic observation and the interviews with stakeholders, the research highlighted some of the best practice in terms of service dedicated to promote international students' orientation and integration, such as international welcome weeks, Italian courses offered, the Hello Information and Orientation Welcome Office, buddy schemes to peer-to-peer, psychological counseling center, scholarships, reduction of tuition fees, some international projects such as Tandem mentorship scheme and the In Here project. But there are also some aspects that, according to the results of the research, need to be improved, such as pre-arrival information and communication between the offices, too much paperwork, and also the communication between offices and students, like English knowledge of university staff, services open to all international foreign students, not only to Erasmus students, more information about Italian examination systems, such as, for instance, international students have shown great difficulty on taking oral exams, supporting students along the integration process, even after access. Seems that most TCN students become Italian-like to the eyes of the institutions once they are in. Also prevents discrimination cases. From the Sapienza International Students Survey we conducted, results show that 44% of respondents declared to have been insulted because of being a foreigner. 24% have been discriminated at the university, and 10% of them declared to have been assaulted while being in Italy. During the research, students were asked how or in which way, according to them, Sapienza could improve their integration process. Answers given were related to promote the engagement between students and university community, enhance the integration between Italian and foreign students, and prevent isolation. For instance, this student says there should be more activities involving foreign students to make them come closer with each other and also with Italian ones. It emerges from the research that Sapienza University is a very big university in a big and somewhat chaotic, although eternal city. It seems therefore crucial to strengthen communication with prospective and incoming students in terms of access and pre-arrival information, with other stakeholders and institutions involved in access and integration of international students, ministries, embassies, and local authorities, strong associations, and with enrolled international students all along their permanence at Sapienza. Furthermore, the institution should stimulate more bottom-up activities in order to promote integration, such as tandem meetings, cultural activities, as well as cultural exchange between TCNs and refugees with domestic students and staff, such as the Tandem Mentorship Program. Finally, to promote the international community, because international students may be not only future ambassadors of Sapienza, but also actors of internationalization that promote social cohesion. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Laura. It's indeed interesting to see how, these recommendations of the Tandem study also apply in the context of Italy, and you have some research findings for Italy precisely. Now, what I mainly picked up is indeed that there is an important number of TCN students enrolled in Italian universities, and that there is also increasing, let's say, interest to have more TCN students. I think it's well pointed out in terms of barriers that, obtaining a visa, a residence permit can be a problem. Recognizing prior qualifications indeed is also a challenge. And then you pointed out to some best practices like international welcome weeks, buddy systems, and so on. To then conclude with some aspects that, according to the findings of your study, would need to be improved, like pre-arrival information, supporting students along the integration process, more bottom-up activities to promote integration and also to prevent discrimination. It's indeed perhaps a shocking finding in your study that up to 24%, so almost 1 in 4 TCN students say that they have been discriminated. I think this calls for action indeed. Now, I would have one question for you, Laura. So you explain some of these barriers that TCN students face. Now, I would like to ask, do you see a difference here between, let's say, international students, so meaning those who really come to Italy with a purpose to study at an Italian university versus, let's say, third country nationals, migrants or refugees who are already in Italy, because a lot of research also shows that unfortunately people with a migrant background, so migrants and refugees in particular, still face a lot of challenges when it comes to obtaining the same educational achievements as citizens of the European Union. So how do you see that, and what some challenges that, higher education for refugees who are already present in Italy?
Okay, thank you for the question. This study mainly regards Hello? Okay.
Laura, please, you can go ahead.
Okay, so this study mainly regarded international students. So you see that I didn't mention in almost refugees. I think it's also a methodological problem there, because for us it's hard to find refugee students to individuate and how to Also, you talked about students with migrant background. In Italy, there are lots of students with a second generation, being a second generation, but we are still trying to work it out because there's no way to, with the data we have, we don't know where their parents were born. So it's hard to get to know them, to get to interview them. But I think it should be done, and we must go further with this because they're already in Italy, as you said, so they are not coming on, but there is an integration process going on, and yeah, there need very much attention from the social sciences. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Laura. So perhaps a subject for future research.
Yes,
Thank you for your contribution. Please stay with us. And for the participants who would have any questions for Laura, please feel free to use the chat function. So with this, I would like to invite Alexandros Triantafylidis, I hope I pronounced that correctly, is an associate professor at Aristotle University of Thessaloniki in Greece. Alexandros, I can already see you. Can we also hear you?
I hope you can hear me too.
Yes, we can hear you. Very well.
Thank you very much for inviting me again to discuss about what is the current situation in Greece. I strongly agree with what the colleague Laura has said before as regards Italy, and I strongly congratulate you on the TandEM report, which actually depicts the situation in Greece as well in a very, very precise manner. You have done a lot of thorough looking into what's happening in Greece as well. My purpose here and my role is just to discuss one of the or two of those points that are already analytically in your report as well. So I can share my screen and yes. So hopefully, can you see my presentation now?
It seems to be loading.
But it's
yes,
not.
We can see it.
Okay. There have been a lot of discussions in Greece about how we can help TCN students in the higher education. We have to remember, of course, that the problem in Greece was very big and there were hundreds of thousands of refugees arriving some years ago. The numbers have decreased a bit, but still there is a lot of new entries every day and during summer as well. And if you look at the statistics as well, there are also tens of thousands of students based on statistics which are also in your report, which are students which could be potential students in the higher education in Greece. Greece is a little bit more different example of European countries as regards the access to higher education. The Greek Ministry and the Ministry of Education and Interiors as well has done a lot of work already trying to integrate students, high school and elementary school students into the education. There are things, however, that need to be done in the higher education. This is what we can discuss. What we will discuss is what are the opportunities for students, TCN students, to go into higher education in Greece. In the Aristotle University, we have been very sensitive to this issue. So because there are some problems which we will discuss a little bit later on, we have, however, worked on educational projects, trying at least to prepare universities around Greece and also European universities as regards what are the best practices in order to integrate refugee students. Which means that we were, Aristotle University was coordinating a project, the Sucre project, which actually looked at best practices around European universities, The Sucre project was sometimes also very parallel to the work that the INHERE project was doing. And so we have a lot of results as regards how universities can help themselves, first of all, how they can help their staff, how they can help the professors, but also what is the things, what are the needs of the refugee students. So we had a lot of outputs which are available online at the Sucre website as regards what are the procedures and what are the best practices. First of all, how to help refugee students be integrated and to be welcome into the universities. Also, how we can also help students remain in the universities after they're integrated in the university. And also, apart from that, we also have to discuss how we can help refugee scholars stay and be able to work with the universities and with the refugee families as well in order to be supported by the higher education universities. Apart from that, there are also, however, this is only the basic work that needs to be also always be involved, and we also have to think about in the universities. As regards preparatory courses for students, this is a little bit more problematic, but there are things happening in Greek universities. We have already...
Cereal mhux ta' ċokolati ta' xaġa tal-almond whatever.
Stefan, can you kindly switch off your microphone? Thank you. Alexandros, please,
yes,
please go on.
We have courses, preparatory courses happening in Aristotle University for students, mostly in language and other preparatory courses with the Refugee Education Initiative, which is another European project happening involving universities from Germany, from London, from Greece, and coordinated by the Central European University. There are also preparatory courses happening in the University of Piraeus through the Jean Monnet Chair, which are organized by Professor Asderaki on European and economic studies. And the major thing that the university and the Ministry of Education is right now working on and collaborating with other authorities around Europe is the European Qualification Passport for Refugees. This is very important as a first step for refugee students to be able at some point to enter the Greek universities, Greece has been one of the first countries to be involved in the first phase, and also now in the second phase where Italy, as far as I know, is involved. However, the difficult things, is the challenges. As I said, although there is access to education, to lower education for refugee class pupils, the system in Greece is very centralized, which means that for foreign students and for refugee TCN students, if they want to enter the master or the PhD courses, first of all, they have to go through the national ERIC-NARIC administration. This is really time-consuming, even for Greek students which have gone abroad to do their undergraduate courses and then continue for the master courses. This takes a lot of time, and for people that might hold, like refugees, that might hold their papers or might not even hold their papers with them, this will take even more time. In this regard, the passport project, the European Passport Qualification Project, is the first step. But I am sorry to say that even though, for instance, as far as I know, in Italy, a student that gets the passport can be admitted automatically to an Italian university, this is not happening in Greece. So we still need time. The Greek ministries has been working a lot about giving a quota for Greek universities in order to at some point be able to accept TCN refugee students, but this has not happened yet. And another thing that we always have to remember is the fact that most courses in undergraduate level in Greek universities are in Greek language. However, the good thing that is now this is changing, so we expect more courses in non-Greek language in the future. And the good thing about, however, the undergraduate courses is that they are for free for any kind of student. So you don't have to pay any money once you get the permission to go into the Greek universities. For master courses, there are a lot in English. However, there are many cases where you have to pay. Although we have some examples with university authorities that have given a waiver, that have reduced the fees for refugee students because of their sensitive and their special situation. If I need to say something is that we're still working on the issues. We had a lot of things to worry about in the past. I think with the new change of government, we can have a little bit more hope that some things can also change even more for the better as regards TCN students. And we have also to acknowledge the work that has been done by many NGOs as regards preparing some TCN refugee students on different language level courses. And I think what I see happening nowadays is that we are all working, universities and NGOs, more as regards not only studies, but also access to jobs, to the job sector. And in Aristotle University, we also have a new project coordinated by Minus University, by Scholars at Risk, which has to do with supporting refugee academics and postdocs into finding a job around Europe as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alexandros. This was a very clear presentation about the situation in Greece and some of the best practices, some of the challenges that you face. Indeed, of course, particularly has seen a very high inflow of refugees and, as you said, with new arrivals every day. And in this bigger question, on higher education, of course, is a point that we have to look at. I also like that you made this link with labor market integration, because indeed there are many studies that show that it's extremely difficult for refugees, even more than any other migrants, to enter the labor market, and if they do, many work below their qualifications. So the question of how to precisely recognize these qualifications, but also how to give refugees the chance to pick up their studies at a university, this can lead then to also much better outcomes, because research does show that there is a big difference between third country nationals or refugees who hold a university degree from the host country versus those who hold a university degree only from their country of origin. And those with a university degree from the host country, of course, have it a lot easier to then later on enter the labor market. So it's good to make that link. Well, so you also touched upon this issue of recognition of qualifications, and that is a very cumbersome and long process. I think this is not only the case in Greece, it's the case in many countries. And you mentioned here this European qualification passport. Now, I was wondering if you could give us a bit more explanation about this European qualification passport. How does that work exactly? And I understand it's still a pilot, but how do you think this could be also further rolled out?
I know some things about it. This is organized for Greece by the Greek Ministry of Education. I know it took some time to start as regards being able to access refugee students and be able to talk with them. But now in the second phase, as I've talked with my colleagues in the Ministry of Education, they have been really bombarded by refugee students who want to be able to be accredited for their work and for the studies that they have done. So it's a process which is quite automated, but it also has some kind of interviews as well. First, you prepare the papers, you send them off to the Ministry of Education. This depends on the country. This is what is happening in Greece. It's also happening in Italy. It's happening in Germany. It's the same thing. And then there is some kind of interview as regards the papers that you don't have. And then in most of the cases, I think in something like 80%, as if I'm not mistaken, this I have not been involved personally, if I remember correctly, most of the refugees who have been there, they have received this European qualification passport, which is a first step in Greece. It's I think, Laura can say that as well, it's the only step they need in Italy in order to be able to access university to go on for further studies. And this is more or less what's happening. If I can only go back to the access to the job sector, I think that this Inspire project organized by a minor university, where also EUA is also involved. So we are going to be working with EUA tightly in the next 3 years. And it's very important for academics and professors who are maybe running away from their governments for different reasons, or with postdocs. And if somebody is listening right now, please keep it in mind. We just started. We're going to have the kickoff meeting next month. So there's going to be a lot of stuff coming out from that as well.
Good, very interesting. We're looking forward to that because indeed there has been more and more discussion also about how, university scholarships or postdocs, research fellows could be like, let's say, a channel for refugees to come. Unfortunately, resettlement options are still limited. So alternative options like student scholarships for researchers at risk, for example, is very interesting to
We're
explore.
Trying to build a network.
So,
yeah.
Very good. So looking forward to hear more about that as the project evolves. Thank you very much, Alexandros, for your contribution. Thank you. And with this, I to Stefan Zandt, who is the head of the Qualifications Recognition Information Center of the National Commission for Further and Higher Education in Malta. Now, Stefan, I know you have experienced some issues with your connection. I hope everything is fine now. Are you here with us? Stefan, can you hear us? You can unmute your microphone.
Okay, unmute the microphone.
Yes, we can hear you. Perfect.
Okay, can you hear me, but not see me. Do I have to unmute video? There you go. Okay.
Yeah. So, yes, we can see you as well. Perfect.
Yeah, I've been having some technical difficulties.
That's fine, no problem.
Audio going on sound. Okay.
We cross our fingers that all goes fine, right?
Me too.
Okay, please, Stefan, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, actually. No one else. I just need a confirmation that I'm still on video. I just got a message that there's no video here.
Yes, okay. We can hear you and we can see you.
Fantastic. So I'm going to give you all a presentation from the perspective of the Qualification Recognition Center of Malta. And Malta is a small island in the Mediterranean. It's a crossroad for migration and a pathway of migration from the southern littoral into Europe, similar to Italy, Greece, and other Mediterranean countries. So how has this impacted our work with regards to recognition of qualifications here? First and foremost, let me give some background of how we operate. Recognition of academic qualifications, the way we operate is that we do not distinguish as such between Maltese nationals, European nationals, third country nationals, or refugees. we are in a sense impersonal. What we look at is the qualification that the person possesses. And by that, I mean that we treat everyone equally. There's no change in the way how fast we process a qualification of a Maltese citizen or of a refugee. The only difference, and it is a positive discrimination, is in the instance that we do have a refugee and we are aware that the refugee is not in a financial position to pay for the service of recognition of qualifications, the service is provided free of charge. Everyone else, so whether it is you are Maltese, European or third country national, there's a standard fare throughout for the service. We are aware that recognition of qualifications can be a protracted period, and especially for refugees, because generally these are qualifications coming from jurisdictions that there isn't that much information about, or is very difficult to get and obtain information from them, because these are countries that either will not reply, or we have had instances that when we do receive replies from certain jurisdictions, even though it is official information, it's contradictory and not consistent with past positions that we have received or partner recognition centers. I'm going to upload a brief presentation to give you a quick overview of where we are.
Okay.
Okay, can you see it?
It's loading. Yes, we can see the slide.
Okay, perfect. So if I can go to my first slide. Technology allows. Okay, the application process. So with regards to refugees, as I said, that have been confirmed to be not in a financially viable position, they are waived at any cost. You do have to appreciate that not all people who have some form of international protection are necessarily in the same financial position. So we are aware that we cannot stretch our services and give it free for everyone. We have to make sure that people are not in a position to pay. We work with local NGOs. These are people who are interacting directly with refugees or people who are in the process of applying for some form of international protection. We have worked with them and we have trained them so that the moment someone is on our territory, they are immediately informed of the service that we give. And we try and we have an outreach program so that people apply and use our services, because as the speakers before me have said, the best thing that we could do for any migrant is integrate them. And if they have a qualification, it is mutually beneficial for Malta and for the migrant to seek employment. And this is the best way of helping them to integrate and hopefully become financially independent. What do we require for the recognition?